Hey everybody, welcome to the Purpose People podcast. Today I've got Steve from Skills for Business, so welcome.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks for making the trip out all the way down from, or all the way up from Southampton.
Yeah.
So really appreciate it. And today we're going to be talking all kinds of great stuff about team building and relationships and stuff like that. But was this always what you wanted to do, what you're doing now?
No, not at all. No.
Right.
So my background was health and fitness management. So
Yeah.
my job was in the fitness industry with Fitness First primarily. So we went from one club on the south coast to the largest in the world. Did that in 7 years, went through the AIM, the full listing. Opening a club a week at 1.2 worldwide. So I experienced fast growth and all its nightmares, all its glories. Left when the city got hold of it and it made no sense to me. My sales team reporting every 15 minutes, so they couldn't do their job. Yeah. And running a bit scared of the city, to be honest with you. It lost its attraction for me, and I became that demotivated staff member I talk about with other people. So I took my share options, left, and spent a bit of time walking up and down the seafront near where I live, looking like a hobo, thinking, well, I've left now, what do I do next? And then I decided I could probably help a few companies with their growth. So I got into coaching companies on growth, and then I got approached by an international coaching organisation called Sherlaws, an Australian outfit that came to the UK. They've specialised in fast growth businesses. So I looked at their methodologies, tools, techniques, and it mapped perfectly my Fitness First journey. So I decided to embark on a journey with them. It was great. I had the toolkit plus the experience, and I spent 3 years with them working on fast growth businesses or with fast growth businesses, but identified what I thought was a weakness in their offering. And if you're going to grow a company fast, you've got to attract and keep talent. And there wasn't really much going on around the culture of organisations. It's more about tools to grow. So I left, took a step backwards, started looking at motivational leadership issues. Mm-hmm. And then the government knocked on my door one day or phoned me and said, look, we're doing this thing about employee engagement because it's so poor in the UK. Only 1 in 3 people going to work actually engaged. Would you come and join the steering committee? So I went up to London, spent 3 years with the steering committee, looking at companies that were getting it right, not getting it wrong. Yeah. What were they doing differently? But I felt nobody was doing anything with the information, so I sidestepped, set up a course, went down to the Vitality Stadium in Bournemouth, presented it to a bunch of business owners, got signed up straight away to kind of help a couple of companies with their growth. We had spectacular results. That resulted in me being in that space and writing a book on it, getting commissioned to write a book, and that kind of set the template for what I do now. So I work on the cultural and growth issues and keeping the motivations right in organisations so they can actually harness their talent and grow it as the company grows. So
that's a pretty good whistle-stop tour.
Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. So I just want to unpack a lot of that journey. The first thing was you walking on the beach, not knowing what next looked like.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. How, what did you reflect on? And what made you sort of like begin to move in the direction that you felt was a good direction?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So for me, there's 2 parts to that. First of all, I was burnt out. So I needed some recuperation time. So luckily I had the share options, so they gave me the breathing space to really sort of think about what I wanted to do next, and then analyse what I'd done, and where the direction. I didn't want to go back into the fitness industry. I kind of had enough of it. Yeah. So that was gone. So what was next was the journey. I thought about the journey. And I thought about the fact that I stopped enjoying the journey, and what was it about that, and why did that occur?
And when did you stop enjoying it? Was it like you woke up one morning and felt, I don't know why I'm doing this, or was it there was an event, like you said, it became floated, and then you just went, I'm out? No,
it's a bit like the bald frog thing. As you board a frog,
okay. Yeah.
Over time, I became more disengaged with the organisation. It was gradual, and it's because it became highly systemised. We were reporting to the city and everything. The company was running scared of the city, so it became, and we were rapidly growing as well. So there was kind of like very entrepreneurial in the early days, but very entrepreneurial as we grew.
Yeah. So which is often the case, right? You're quite nimble, and then you become this machine, and then all of a sudden it takes longer to twist and turn.
Yeah, and we were all over the world, and it was kind of like, I think for me, it just lost its magic.
Yeah.
And it just grew, it just became more apparent to me. And then there was a pain point of, do you know what, I've had enough.
Yeah.
And then you make that decision.
I guess even in making that decision, that's brave in itself, because some people don't.
Yeah.
Some people just go until they're absolutely forced to stop. You know, so what was that conversation like to say you're leaving?
I think if you've ever been in that situation, I think a lot of us have. I was getting to lunchtime and I was just knackered. I just wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just thinking, you know, and I've always had that mantra from an early age: don't complain about it. If you're not enjoying it, do something else.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've had that kind of, you know, I worked out when I was 20. When I worked out, I spent most of my life sleeping, the rest of it working, and I'd have some social time. So whatever I did socially, whatever I did work-wise, had to have a meaning and a purpose to it.
Yeah, yeah.
And if it was to lose that, don't complain about it. Do something about it.
Yeah.
So I had that kind of mantra in the back of my mind, and I had to remind myself about that. And that was what made me shift. Really, I thought, you know, you're going to. I always love. I'm quite selfish. I like to do my own thing on my terms,
Yeah.
and I like to enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
And that was important to me, and it wasn't. I wasn't enjoying it.
Because the reason why I bring it up is there's people listening on the podcast that are sat in that job that they're not enjoying,
Yeah.
and you know they're trying to make that decision. Well, do I do it? Do I not do it?
Yeah.
And what I find interesting about your journey is that you made the jump without knowing what next looked like. Of granted, you had the share options.
Yeah,
to fall
I did
back
have.
on,
I was lucky.
which gives you a bit of flex, doesn't
Yeah.
it? But you know, what tips would you give to that person to find out what next looks like?
Well, if you look at the Gallup stats recently, it's got worse in the UK. Only 10% of UK employees going to work are engaged in their work. So that means 90% disengagement.
Yeah.
That's really horrible. I don't think it's so much in the SME. I think it's more corporate.
Yeah.
Where you're a small cog in a big wheel. And when you're in SME, it's slightly different because you're a bigger cog and you can play a multiple tasks in an SME. You can't do that so well in a corporate. So that's the first thing. But I think you just got to look about, you know, life isn't a rehearsal. It's happening right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got to work out. You're going to spend a lot of your time, the rest of your life, working probably, a lot of it, till you retire. So what do you want to do? What impact do you want to make? What imprint do you want to make on the world?
Yeah.
And that's how I looked at it. I thought, well, if you live off purpose, which a lot of people want to do, most of society want to make a difference.
Yeah.
So are you making a difference currently in your role, or are you just treading water
Yeah.
and doing a routine job where you're on the treadmill?
Yeah.
And I think anything like this, is there enough pain to move?
Mm-hmm.
If there's not enough, people want to either move away from stuff or towards stuff, and it's a combination of the two. So I think I would sit down and go, right, okay, what do I want my life to look like?
Mm-hmm.
What do I want? What's reasonable for me to aspire towards? And the other thing you can tell yourself, if today was the first day of the rest of your life, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, the past is gone, the present's here,
So
and the
what are you gonna
future's to be grabbed. So what are you going to do about grabbing the future?
So when you then make that transition. So you've been in a fast growth environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you're almost working the other side of the fence.
Yeah, it was strange. I remember it's like you had loads of friends, very frenetic, and then suddenly when you leave, you find out who your friends are. That's the first thing.
That's the first one.
And you realise you haven't got that many.
No.
So you're kind of like a nobody, and you're deciding on a career, and then you've got to create your positioning within that marketplace, and you're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So it's really quite daunting.
Yeah.
And you've got to be up for the challenge, but you've got to have a clear vision about what you want.
Yeah, and I think for me it was, you know, I remember when I was going to run a marketing agency and I quit, and I was about to sign papers to run it with 4 other people. Well, I was one of the 4. And exactly that. It's like you felt you had loads of mates in the world of work, and then you got none. And you're like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Like just 2 weeks ago, I'm like the man, and now where is everyone? And everyone moves on with life.
Yeah, they do, and you're forgotten very quickly. I think you've got about 6 months with those connections to go back to them before they become dormant.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think the other thing is that people still see you in your old role, not your new role.
Yes.
So they still classify me as a fitness person, not a business coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I had to grapple with that too.
And identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Shift.
So that was quite tough, just repositioning, and then you realise actually don't go for the people you used to work for, create a new market.
So what was quite interesting in what you said though is that you started to see gaps in the growth journey, in the scale journey, and that's where you obviously found your space in terms of. So what were the major gaps that you could see almost straight away?
Well, I was curious as to why I left an industry I loved and become so demotivated. So that was really interesting for me. I used to love the fitness industry, and then I woke up one morning and didn't love it. So, gradually didn't.
How does that happen? Yeah.
How did that happen, and what happened to me? And then I started to look at why that happened, and then I started to look at it dawned on me that was a leadership issue in the organisation I was working for. It was a motivational issue from my part. What I was seeing didn't motivate me. Why was it that it changed so much that it didn't motivate me?
Yeah.
So then I started to look at the evolution of that and go and thinking actually, what tools are out there to make sure people can find the right thing, can stay motivated or move, and understand why they feel like they feel, so that they can make a decision to either change it within the business or move.
And I think the other thing that you flagged up is that you were burnt out.
I was burnt out.
And it was like, how do you protect people from doing that as well?
Yeah, well, I think I see a lot of that. I was talking to a guy coming up driving up here today, who's completely burnt out. He can't see his future, can't see how he can get out of what he's got, so he's in this kind of trap. And I think it's a self-made trap. And I said to him, there will be a way. Yeah. Actually, you're not thinking the right way to solve the issue. So I think there's a lot of that. People, there's an old expression, you seek the teeth that fits the wound. Sometimes it suits people to be in that trap. Yeah. Because they don't have to then make decisions about their life. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can get, it's almost like you have to move out of it, but some people just want to stay in that pain.
Well, it suits them, it serves them some way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they stay there.
Yeah, it's like, I'll give you an example. It's like if you could have a knee operation to heal your knee, which means you wouldn't be needing mobility benefit, would you do it? And there's some people that would say, no, I'm going to leave my knee as it is because I like the car and I like the mobility benefit. Yeah. And there's other people that go, no, I want to be as I was before. I want to be able to flex, do all that kind of stuff. I think it is a trade-off.
Yeah, and I've seen this when people are sick as well. When they're sick, they get a lot of attention, so they become sick more. Yeah. Because they get the attention. Yeah. So it's negative serving, basically.
Yeah. It's not helping them, but somehow it becomes comfortable. Yeah,
it means they get a lot of attention, whereas they wouldn't.
So you come out of what you were doing, and you obviously find a stream that is attractive, and you learn and you educate or whatever, and then that transitioned into you working with the government. Yeah. Yeah. And you spent 3 years with them. What type of organisations and conversations were going on there?
Well, it was a steering committee, so a lot of the research had already been done, but it was really interesting because they boiled it down to 4 key things that why these companies were different, and it was all about looking after their people and culture. You know, it was having you'll understand this. It was that the 4 things were a strategic narrative, which was a vision of story about where you've been, where you are, where you're going. Yep. That's communicated fully to the whole team and the business and also customers. Yeah. Okay, fully communicated. So people can make decisions as they join you, they can see where they're going, but they also know what they're joining as well. Yeah, of course. So that was the first thing. The second thing was engaging managers. Now, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses a lot of the time. 100%, yeah. So how good are your leaders, and is there consistent leadership within your organisation, which means you've got to motivate your people, means you've got to do, you've got to do the human side, not just the mechanical side. Yeah. They recognised that there was... the other thing was communication in the business, listening to your people. So having an understanding about employer voice. So Richard Branson would tell you he employs talent so they can tell him what to do. I see companies employ talent and all they do is dictate to it. Yeah. So they don't get the best out of those people and they disconnect them. Yeah. And the final thing is which one's the final. So it's basically integrity. So integrity basically means you say what you say, you do what you say you're going to do. There's integrity within the organisation. So there's values that we live and breathe and we evidence, and their consequences and rewards. So they're not just values on a wall, we live and breathe them in the organisation. So they were the 4 things they found in organisations that really were harnessing the full potential and capabilities of people. And it's not rocket science, it's just that people don't think like that in business. They think in terms of sales and bottom line. They don't think, what's the single most expensive item after our capital investment? It's our people, and we're not doing anything for our people to make sure we keep them and grow them.
Yeah, I think what's interesting there is the areas of when you're recruiting, and the area of recruiting is recruiting around values. Yeah. And I think that there's not enough education around that, because you become a cog in a wheel. But if you're educating around values, then all of a sudden there's a bit more alignment there. Yeah. And then you can bring mission and vision and values and that to the table. But what's interesting there, if you're building around values, you can have multiple different personalities. Yeah, you can. You know, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be red or blue or what all these other colours mean. Personality profile. Just the values align, and you can find your role within the organisation. Yeah. And so that's something I've seen a lot, where people recruit around values. So that creates longevity in the business as well. But it means you get the right fit. And I think as I've got older, I've ended up recruiting more around values than anything else. Yeah, I think that's a spot-on thing. Values are highly underrated. Now, the younger generation now, they'll look at the values of an organisation and they'll make decisions not to join them based on the values. So there's a lot of that going on right now, because it has to fit their ethos of what they want, who they want to work for, which is, I think that's great. I think the employees are driving the marketplace. They are. And the other thing I used to do at Fitness First when I was recruiting was I used to work out recruiting attitude, for example, not skill. When I was recruiting for Fitness First, we had people coming out of their colleges in their droves. So it wasn't about skill. It was about the way they behaved, their attitudes and behaviours. So I would draw a sheet up. So let's say I had a receptionist, so I'd want them to make eye contact within 30 seconds of someone coming in. Yeah. I'll go to lots of local authority leisure centres where the receptionists don't even look up. And it drives you mad. So making eye contact within 30 seconds, answering the phone within 3 rings, getting the sales inquiry to the salesperson within 10 minutes so they don't go to another club. They were all behaviours I was looking for. In the aerobic studio, I looked for entertainers. You could have someone who's brilliant mechanically at showing you the moves, but boring as hell. Yeah. I wanted entertainers, someone who could make you forget your miserable day. Yeah. And and when you looked at the gym, we had 16, 17-year-olds in the gym, so they would just gravitate towards their mates given the opportunity. So I was looking for people who could talk to old age pensioners, and if there's a pregnant woman coming back into the gym is maybe a bit timid, how do they approach them? Yeah. So we're looking for those abilities. And I just do an ABC sheet. A is outstanding. So if I had someone outstanding, what is it about them over and above their skill set that makes them outstanding? B is we'll accept, and C is we will never accept. Yeah. And work out on attitude. And then when that person comes into the business, when you've got the right attitude, they'll learn anything. Yeah, they'll do anything, provided you keep them and you treat them fairly. So started to look at that, and that links back to the values straight away. So that's how we recruited. No, absolutely. Because I think we've got a couple of recruiters on our books in terms of creation, and that quitting the boss is massive. Everyone thinks it's salary. It's not salary. It's not. No. It's do they get on with their boss, and then the second one is like progression. Is the ability to progress? And that's why I'm quite strong on purpose, is because you might not run your own business, but if you can work in a business where you can fulfill purpose, where you can bring in your skills, talents, abilities are being magnified and being grown, then that's the best place to be. I think that's a great point in personal positioning. Yeah. What do you stand for? Yeah. And then taking that to an organisation. And if it aligns with what you stand for, you fit. Yeah. You've got your principles and the way you want to live your life. And if it aligns with them, it's a match. 100%. And then everybody's going to win. And every time I've recruited for skill alone, it's not really worked. No, skill alone, it might. It's a bit of a lottery, isn't it? Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And that's when I was running a marketing agency in London, and we would recruit on skill. They're talented. They've won a few awards. We take them on, and it's like, no, they don't fit. It just doesn't work. There's nothing worse than having someone who's highly skilled but demotivated. Yeah.
and you can't get them to do the job that you employed them to do.
No.
But their CV says they're great.
Exactly, and yet they're like, because we were very much about dreaming up ideas, art direction, and then they're just like, they're blank.
Yeah.
And you're like, the clock is ticking.
Yeah, they're
we've got to get this done.
Technically gifted, but no ideas coming through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I know.
And then you find out somewhere deep down they've made the decision because they wanted to move, or they were running away from something or whatever else. So it's not to say that person is not valuable. It's just right time, right place, wrong fit. It's like, you know what? Actually, do yourself a favour and go and find something that makes you happy first and foremost.
Yeah.
So your journey then. So now you're moving from that place of work for a high growth company. You're in that government think tank, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then you decide to build skills for business.
Yeah.
So when did this is what I'm going to call it.
It came when I was working for Sherlaw, so I thought it was quite. First of all, it was a licensed product, so you had your own clients and you worked with their methodologies, and they were great. But I just felt there was that bit missing, and that was the bit I wanted to do, which was the motivational stuff. It kind of fitted with my background in sports, sports coaching and all that kind of stuff, which I originally started. Where you just want to better people. If you want to better people, you've got to motivate them.
Yeah.
So I started to look at, well, why aren't they motivated? What are the issues, the leadership issues, the motivational issues? I didn't know employee engagement was a name until they came up with it. Yeah. But at the time, I was just working in that space of making people better leaders, making people better motivators of people, getting the best out of people. It was just logical to me.
So what was that? What was the thing that when you got someone in front of you? What's the sort of the lights that come on that clearly aren't on at that moment in time?
Yeah, so I've got a motivational tool called Motivational Mapping, and I've developed into a corporate tool called Mojo. So this is a questionnaire. It's not a personality profile, which we talked about briefly, or touched on briefly, which is your behaviours at work. This is more about why you get out of bed, why you come into work, and why you're what you're looking for. So it's kind of based more on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So as one need is met, another one comes in. So it's dynamic and changeable. So people like us, we're very creative. We like to innovate. We like to take risks. We like to do new things, but a majority of society are the opposite to us. They're cautious, they're defenders, what we call defenders, so they don't like to take risks, they don't respond well to change, and they need to be reassured if this change is going to happen, that how they fit. Yeah. So we've got these 9 work motivators. So I look at the work motivators. When they do the questionnaire, we identify the top 3, and they're the main drivers for that individual. So people like us, we're more entrepreneurial. So we'd have creator, spirit, freedom and autonomy, and probably searcher, want to add value in the world. Yeah. And possibly expert, which is making expertise. So we kind of know that we're fast-paced, we're forward-thinking, we're quite holistic in our approach, but that's not the same for everybody.
No, and I think that's right. I mean you need everybody. And even if you go back to sport, you look at a football team. You've got those creative people that want to put the ball in the back of the net, but you've got other people that actually enjoy having clean sheets, and defending and the tackles and that what else. So it's about everybody finding their place.
So when I look at a team, we look at we've got a blend of this going on, and because we're quite creative, we'd bust the company on our own if we didn't have someone putting the handbrake on at the background, going, hold on a second, if you do that, you'll burn out the bank account and we'll have no money. So you kind of need this blend within your team, and everybody's got their place. But so we kind of look at, and also when you're making career decisions like we're talking about, what is it you want? Well, actually, a lot of people don't know what they want. That's the problem. So they stick with what they've got. So this helps them understand, what is it I really want out of work? And then how do I go and find it? When I did the motivational map for the first time, I changed the whole way I did my business based around my motivations. Now, they are dynamic and changeable, but at that point in time, it was really critical for me. I worked out I didn't want to phone people and try and get work. I needed an audience. If I got an audience of 50 people, that's like 50 sales calls for me. If they come up to me afterwards, it's not about selling, it's about actually closing the deal. So it's not... I haven't got to go and explain my business
to them. You don't have to convince people.
No, they're bought into it. I'm having a conversation about, do you want to do this? So that's the way I grew my business. And all I did was I found mates of mine that knew lawyers, accountants, people who had clients. I said, look, I'll come and run a free workshop for your clients, and it'll energy raised for you, around your clients. And if they want to work with me, I won't be salesy, then we'll have an agreement.
Yeah.
So that's how I built my business, really. I didn't want to do those. I did 3 phone calls and I'm walking my dog because I hated doing cold calling.
Yeah.
That wasn't my style. Some people love it and some people are very good at it.
No, yeah. Some people are great at that cold conversation and trying to keep someone on there, and some people are just like, it's just awkward. You actually do them a favour by saying, I'm not interested. They probably think, oh, phew. I've not had to do it.
Yeah, so my style was all about being in front of people and actually just building relationships and seeing where they go, basically.
So define for me what a scaling organisation is, or high growth, as you put it.
Right.
What is a high growth organisation? Because we hear these terms, don't we? Scale up, start up.
Yeah.
It's like these are all sometimes buzzwords. But what is it? What does that actually mean?
Well, in my world, what I consider is, when you start a business, you're very entrepreneurial. You're very technical. You're brilliant at what you do. Therefore, you can grow it because you're using your expertise. And then you start to bring a team on board. And then I think there's that magic point you have to decide, are you an entrepreneur or are you a business owner?
Yeah.
That's the thing. And there's a pivotal point, I think, about 50 staff. Some people get there earlier, where actually the business owner they become the pinch point of the business because they're making all the decisions, they're controlling everything, and therefore they can't grow.
Yeah.
So it's how do they step aside and recognise actually they've now got to manage the business and put a team in place.
Yeah.
Because they're almost victims of their own success. They've grown it, they're successful, and now they've got this challenge of growth.
Yeah.
And it's exponentially growing. So they've had the payback, they've had the money back into the account, they come back off their holiday, they've got their new car, they've got their new house, sometimes they've upgraded their spouse, and then suddenly they've now got to manage this growth and they can't do it on their own, so they need to put a leadership team in.
Yeah.
They need systems and processes, they need to reposition themselves sometimes in the marketplace, and they need different measurement tools. So that's that kind of pivotal point, about 5 million, 50 staff. I see it a lot where they flip into being business owners, not entrepreneurs anymore, and they've got to think and behave differently, and they need good leadership teams.
It's an interesting thing that you brought the 2 phrases up, because for me, it was like I was asked that question probably about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And, I was growing creation to a point, the business, and it was like, it wasn't going as fast as I wanted it to be, and it wasn't broken, but it was just, when someone asked me that question, you business owner or entrepreneur, I realised I was an entrepreneur, not a business owner.
Yeah.
Which has allowed me now to move more into the ambassadorial role and not the day-to-day role. So like our team have meetings now where I'm not in. Like I've got a meeting in, I don't know, half an hour. I don't know if I'm going to be in there, but it doesn't matter if I'm not, because the team can handle it.
Yeah.
So
that's the shift.
Yeah.
And also, if you're going to scale a business, at some point you're going to have succession issues,
Yep.
and you're going to want to sell it. Now, it's no point if you are the business. I see a lot of accountants where they are the business. They think it's worth a fortune. They're going to sell it for a fortune, but actually no, because they are the business.
Yeah.
All the client relationships are with them. Therefore, if they leave, the clients have no loyalty to the company.
Yeah.
Whereas if they're doing business with the business, it's a completely different story, because actually the business owner is separated out.
Yeah.
The team deal with the inquiries, and the business runs, and all their job is, and it's your job now, is to be strategic and bring in the business, and then the sausage machine takes care of it.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're definitely at, like as an agency now, and we're working with, funny enough, on a much larger scale. We're working with a few companies that are going through that exact journey. Yeah. That the founder has grown it to an epic proportion, and then they brought in a CEO to almost prepare the business for the next level, and the founder's not really going to be too involved long term.
And if you're going to sell a business, if you think about selling a business, you want a highly profitable business where the business owner's sitting on top of it, where the clients love working with them, the staff love being there.
That's it.
And it's a great business because it doesn't require the business owner to be.
Yeah. And so that's hard as a founder, I think, sometimes to sit on your hands and say, you know what, I can't get involved.
Yeah, it's a bit like teenagers. You've got teenagers, they grow up, they leave hold on a second, I've got no role now. Yeah. So, there's a hard space for a business owner, because when they sit in that strategic space, they're not involved in the operation, which they've loved. Yeah. So and they don't know what to do to grow the business now. So they're sitting in that space wondering, what do I do in this space?
Which the itch that's been scratched for me is that being an entrepreneur is like, I'm working on other things now as well, which is great. So I can get out the way and I can get into the more, the the startup journey of another company, which is great, which has been good for me.
Yeah, which you've done. And I think that's great because you have the freedom to do it now. You have the trust in the team to grow the business. You've still got a handle on what's going on because you've still got input.
Yeah.
You're still bringing clients to the table, but the business runs itself.
Yeah.
Now, if you ever to turn around and say, I want to exit, sell or whatever, you're in a good position now.
Well, I'm starting getting emails now.
Yeah, well, you will do.
Because, hey, what are you up to? You thought about valuing your business? Do you want to exit?
Yeah.
And I'm like, nah, I'm all right, mate. We'll carry on as we are, But I guess that's a good sign if you're getting those emails,
Well, there'll come a day. Yeah, well, that's great because it means they've recognised that you have something of value.
Yeah.
When they look and when they come and get underneath the bonnet of your business, they'll realise actually you don't even run it.
Yeah.
It's got all the systems and processes in place. It's got the ROIs.
Well, we're getting there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but and you're getting the return on investments.
Yeah.
And it's a well-oiled machine. You're not inefficient because that's the other thing. As companies grow, they become more. Their turnover doubles, but their profit halves because they're inefficient. So getting the efficiencies right is key. And then you start to see this is a profitable business where the business owner doesn't, can walk away tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we could buy it.
Yeah, so with those businesses then that you talked about and on the growth, so you're working with obviously trying to find out the right people in the right place.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10. So you mentioned there were 9. Do you want to just give us a whistle stop?
Oh yeah.
So the 9 areas.
Yeah, the 9 motivators.
Yeah, 9 motivators. Yeah.
So they fall into 3 categories: relationship, achievement, and growth.
Yeah.
So the relationship ones are defender. So defender, we've mentioned, they like security and predictability, do not like change. So any change transformation program freaks them out a little bit.
Yeah.
But you've got to create certainty for them. And also, don't talk about change. Talk about improvement. They understand the word improvement because it's going from something they know to, but change is completely different. Yeah. So that's the first thing. The friend is the person. If I relate it back to COVID, they're the person who couldn't wait to get back into the office. They need those community. They need people around them. So when you're managing them, you've got to build in a bit of social time but they are the glue that gets everybody together. And then you've got the star. The star in the UK is not very high. These are people who like to shine, peacock, be on stage, all that kind of stuff.
Right, okay.
Famous for being famous, that kind of stuff. So it's not we're unsung heroes in the UK. We're very conservative.
Yeah, we don't like the stage.
But you go to the States a lot over there. It'll be like, look at me.
No, big time. I get it. 100%.
Yeah. So that's the star, and then they make good marketeers, by the way. So
funny enough, when we had a few people come over, they were the loudest people in the building wherever we went.
Yeah, there you go. So attention's on me, please, thank you. So they like to peacock and shine, and then you move into the achievement ones. So you've got first of all you've got the director. So these people like control. They like to be in control of everything. So that was, if you're a business owner and you're that mentality or motivation, the danger is you are the limiting factor because you're trying to control everything. So it's learning how to let go. But also when COVID hit, if their staff went home, they'd be wondering what their staff are doing. They wouldn't be able to control what's coming, so they would have been struggling with their director profile at that point.
Yeah.
And then you've got the builder. So the builder, it's all about the money, material satisfaction, above living. So whatever they do, I need good money. So they like bonuses, but they make very good salespeople. Okay, and then you've got the final one in the achievement one is the expert. So they like to learn, develop, grow. So they want to demonstrate their expertise, but they also want to learn.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you come to the final 3, which are more entrepreneurial, which are the growth ones, which are creator, which is all about innovation. Every day being different. So when COVID hit the creator, it's just another day at the office. Chaos. I love it. I can sort all these problems out.
Yeah.
I can put these new ideas, and I've been trying to do for ages that no one's been able to accept because there's chaos. And then you have the spirit. Spirit is all about freedom and autonomy.
Yeah.
So they can be a bit maverick at times, but they're original thinkers as well. And when COVID hit the spirit, you'd think going home, that would be great, doing their own thing. But when they got home, they were stuck in bedrooms or having to walk the dog or go shopping when they didn't want to, and stuff like that. So it didn't always work, but they love that freedom. So managing them is just give them clear, concise instructions, leave them alone.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
just have a reporting process, but don't annoy them. And then the final one is searcher, which is all about doing things about value and purpose.
Yeah.
So when I get up in the morning, I want to add value in the world.
Well, you did that. You did a whistle stop tour for us in Canary Wharf, and I was pleased to say that all three of the latter.
Yeah, well, it's no surprise to me.
I was like, oh, okay, they're all blue. Brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
But it was good because it kind of like, as I reflected on my journey, I'm in the place that I need to be.
Yeah, you are. I mean, you're in a very good place now, but you've earned the right to be there, I'd say.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
You've gone through some of the pain of growing a company.
And at times it is painful and it is hard, and and it's not always easy. That's why no one ever does it. But it's the thing of, I think for a lot of business owners, if you're still in business and got through COVID, well done.
And I think
people underestimate it.
It can be a lonely place as well. That's the other thing, because you think you're the only one with problems, but that's not the case.
No.
But you've got to that point where it's life on your terms now.
Yeah.
And you're dictating what happens. And I think that's the beauty of you. I think you get to about 45-ish, you got there a bit earlier, where you start to think, I've done all the achievement stuff, it's life on my terms now.
You got the 9 tools, the 9 things. So how do you take people through that process then? So is it a workshop? Do you go into the business?
So, well, typically, first of all, they might do a motivational map. So that's a questionnaire.
Okay.
And it challenges all those 9 motivations against each other to rank them. What's most important, what's least important. And it's just as important to know your least, because that's the person who's going to wind you up the most. So people like defenders for us who don't like a lot of change, and we like a lot of change, probably going to wind us up.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
that typically in the business world is owner versus accountant.
Yes.
Okay, you shouldn't do this. Yes, I'm going to do it, kind of stuff. So they get a little bit of that, and you get the director and the spirit clashing, which is like the director is about control and spirit's about freedom. So they clash, and then you get the friend who wants to talk to you all day long versus the spirit who doesn't want to talk to anybody. So you kind of get these clashes. So it helps you understand where you sit, what's most important to you. We take the top 3, and we go, right, these are the ones that drive you most. So if I could ask you this question, so I said creativity being your main driver, how much of that do you get on a day-to-day basis out of 10? Do you get a lot of creativity? Some people don't, some people do.
I reckon it's about 8 regularly. 8, it's because of the different businesses.
Yeah.
So if I'm not being so creative in one, the other business is demanding other things of me to think creatively.
Yeah.
So I've always got a space to go to.
So that's really good. So that's a high score of 8. So we'd be looking at actually how do we maintain that, or what's going to come in to negatively impact that. Now, if you had to systemize your business and you were stuck in all the systemization processes, and you weren't allowed to be creative in it, you just had to go through the mud of doing it, which is hard.
Yeah.
It would impact your ability. You'd lose a bit of a will to live.
Agreed. And I think, as we're scaling the businesses, and we're having to put a lot more processes in place, for example, so I'm not around, I don't even do that. It's like, well, you guys find the process that works for you. Whereas before I used to dictate what the process was. Yeah. I've got essentially the high level joined up process in creation of how to do stuff. So we have the playbook, we have a creative strategy, we have the brand build, we have web design, web build, then content. Yeah. Those pillars are there. But all the nuances that get you there, I'm not worried about.
Yeah. So you've obviously recognised that in yourself,
that
you've been there and done that. It was painful. I don't want to go through that again. Let's build a system that allows me not to do that.
Yeah.
So see the conversation that just created there around, okay, if you weren't in the creative space, if your creativity wasn't getting tapped into, and I'll give you an example in a minute, then you'd be very low on that score.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you, as a consequence, you'd be working off resilience, not energy.
Yeah.
And that would drain you over time, possibly make you ill. Okay, so we have to be mindful of that. Your second one, let's say your second one, spirit, just picking the top 3 there. So freedom and autonomy. All right, you're growing an empire. How much freedom do you have? Out of 10, I don't know, I'm going to ask the question, how much freedom do you get?
Again, I'd say it's about an 8 now. I've not always had it, but certainly now I have.
See, so you've created that for yourself. So you've recognised this. So you've now got the freedom. How do you maintain that? Because if you're going to start getting involved in other businesses and that sort of stuff, flying to the States like you do takes your time. So will you? There'll be a point where you won't have that freedom. How do you keep that?
Yeah.
Okay, that would be the key. And the final one, I'm sure this is going to be a 10. How much difference do you make in the world?
Yeah, well, there's always more difference than you can make, but 100%.
Yeah, so
why I do the podcast.
So I've already worked out you're probably 80 to 90% motivated right now, so we haven't got a problem with that at all. But the way that it would work against you, suddenly, let's suppose you're an employee, which you wouldn't be, because you're unemployable, like me, with those qualifications. But if you were employed, new boss comes in, on your case all the time, it's not about new ideas, just follow the process. doesn't give you any freedom, autonomy.
Yep.
It just micromanages you completely.
Yeah.
And Ollie, it's not about making a difference. Sorry, not Ollie. Call you Ollie. That's what we were talking about him earlier. It's not about making a difference. It's about just getting the job done. So I'll be telling you when you haven't done it right, not when you have.
That's it. Yeah, I think I go back to my journey. So originally, creation began in a charity, so as a project, and there was a time where those sorts of things began to creep in.
Yeah.
And it was ultimately we were given the ultimatum that we could either play a game and keep the turnover underneath a certain amount, which meant exactly that. And it was like, no, I can't do that. That will kill me. It just you're growing, you're building stuff to grow, not you're building stuff to maintain and play in a game. Yeah. And I thought, well, no, this is the wrong vehicle now. And so ultimately we took the business out of the charitable setup, and then we haven't looked back. But the point of it is that knowing that maybe just fortuitously, what you've just described there, I knew that of myself, that I would die in an environment like that. It was just, I'd wake up every morning going, why am I even going there? You know, it just, any bit of entrepreneurial, spirit, if you like, would just be
smashed.
Just couldn't do it.
Yeah, and that's the thing we talked about earlier, the small cog and a big wheel in the corporate world. Yeah. You're not there to make a difference. You're not there to be creative, and you're not there for freedom. We want our pound of flesh.
That was it. Where's the money? Where's the money? We just want the money. And it's like, yep. And it was command and control, and it's like, no, it's not going to work.
Yeah, perform regardless. Yeah.
It's not going to work.
If you're not, we'll get somebody else, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So you can kind of see why the corporate world is not attractive to me anymore because of that, because basically you are just a number.
Yeah.
And the SME world is more attractive because people can actually add real value.
Do you think, Steve, obviously because of your experience and seeing the high growth company and the corporate world, is there any corporate companies that actually get it right?
I think
there's got to be some, surely, that are better than, because we talk about banks. When we say corporate, most people go, "Oh, banks," straight away.
Yeah.
But there's got to be some large. Is the DNA of Google, Apple, Facebook, has that got any better, or are they just the same thing?
Well, I don't suppose you'll really know unless you get under the skin of it and talk to the staff. But I would imagine Richard Branson's companies, especially in the early days, he was really about people. So.
But then he said, it's about if you don't know how to do it, say yes and figure it out afterwards. That is a testament to exactly how his businesses are.
Yeah, and I think
some work, some don't. But he said yes.
Yeah, I think possibly with Richard Branson, because he's more what I call more a people's person. So if you hear stories about Richard Branson, doesn't matter. He'll talk to the cleaner for an hour.
Yeah,
he and he's got no size to him. So you hear those kind of stories where you think about Sir Alan Sugar. He wouldn't spend 5 minutes with a cleaner, and if he would, he'd be clipping him around the ear because it's not clean. So it'll be that kind of conversation.
Yeah.
So I think in corporate world there are some examples. There is a shoe manufacturer over in America, and I can't remember the name of them at the moment.
Oh, were they the ones that sold to Amazon?
Possibly, but they used to recruit staff, and even if you were a chief finance officer, you weren't allowed to do your job for a year because you had to go and work in every department to understand the business. They had a philosophy where, they would get you to send a video of yourself before they interviewed you because they wanted to find out about you and whether you suited them.
I'm just trying to figure out what the name of the company was, because that company's in a book called The Lean Startup, how they started. And basically, they started by taking a picture of some shoes.
Yeah.
So they would go and buy some shoes down the road. They'd come back, take a picture, and then upload it onto the internet.
Okay.
And at the time, everyone said you'd never sell shoes on the internet.
Okay.
And it was just online. And they just sent the link to some people, and they went there and they bought them. And they're, oh my gosh, people are buying these shoes.
Yeah.
Because a size 10 is a size 10. I mean, you might have wider feet or narrower feet, but generally, a shoe is a shoe is a shoe. And that's how they began to sell.
Yeah, I'm struggling to remember their name, but it is the same company.
It's so annoying.
So you get companies like that. You hear stories. I've got another story about a chap who gives his staff £3,000 to go on holiday a year and makes them go. And he says that's boosted his productivity beyond anything because they feel valued. Yeah,
and one of the things that we implemented, which we've been doing now for nearly 6 years, was the 4-day work week, where we run on a 2-week cycle. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday everyone gets off. That's part of the sort of like full-time team. And then the second week, that is an R&D day.
Yeah.
And so they can go and explore, they might need to learn new software, try some new equipment, go to a conference, whatever.
Yeah.
They can do that as well. And we've had people that have DM'd our team to recruit, and they said, do you do a 4-day work week? And they went, no. And they said, well, leave me alone then. And it's been great.
Yeah.
It's helped. So a lot of our team have been with us quite a while. And if they do move on, they've done a decent stint with us.
They're moving on for the right reasons, aren't they?
Yes.
That's the difference.
It's not like they're moving out within 18 months. It's a good 3 to 5 years they're with us.
Life changes. People have different circumstances. They leave for their own reasons. And as long as that's the right reason for both of you, it works.
Absolutely. So once you've got all that intel and intelligence and you bring it into a company and everyone is essentially placed in the place where they're likely to thrive, what are the benefits of that as an organisation?
Well, we do a 90-day, the way I look at this, you do a 90-day ROI for your business, KPIs, but you're not doing it for your people.
Yeah.
So you should do it for your people. So every 90 days, we look at the motivations of staff. We look at the previous 90 days, what have they achieved?
Yeah.
So there'll be some metrics in there. What objectives were you set? What have you achieved? What did you find difficult? What support do you need? What successes have you had? Anything at home that's bothering you that we should know about that's going to impact your performance? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the previous 90 days. Then we look at the motivations of where they are now. So how motivated are they? How do we maintain it if it's high? How do we improve it if it's low? And we set some clear goals through coaching.
Yeah.
And then we look at the next 90 days objectives. So every 90 days there's a focus on performance, but it's a conversation. It's not us telling you how we want you to perform. It's an agreed conversation about what's fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that makes people feel attached and makes them feel like they belong and they're listened to. Now, I went out to Abu Dhabi and worked with a company, and we did this process, and one of the guys said, this is the first time in 10 years anybody's asked me how I feel.
Wow.
And that's the corporate world.
Yeah.
And that's the danger. So it's more, when you're SME, you're small, you're a close-knit community, you kind of know each other, there's a lot of familiarity. But as you start to grow, certainly beyond 100 staff or 50 to 100 staff, you don't know everybody. And sometimes they'll get a point in your career where you're recruiting, the people have been recruited and you won't even have met them.
Oh, 100%.
And you're walking one day, who's that guy over there? So there'll be that element going on where it shifts. So you need to make sure your people process is support, because what happens is companies grow, but their culture doesn't grow with them. The culture dies.
And I think that, for me, we've always tried to stipulate that people that join us know someone or they're connected with us in some other way other than just work. And it's worked well for us. And when they haven't been connected with anyone on the team, again, it's gone okay, but it hasn't gone great.
Yeah.
And those people that do fit and do know, they last a long while, and because they culturally fit outside of the job, and it almost, because they're now part of the job, it elevates the team even more. So
yeah, it's interesting. And one of the things you can do, because as you grow your organisation, they're not always going to meet you. So I get the MDs to tell their story on video, and have it on their website.
Well, we've got a podcast. We can put that in there. Welcome, Pat.
So so everybody gets to hear the founders talking about their business.
Yeah.
And how it's evolved, how it's changed. Yeah. That's really key. And it's in the induction process as well. So nobody misses it. They get a chance to hear it firsthand.
Yeah, it's good. I like that because, with me, obviously my wife is now doing a lot more of the sort of like the ops role, but now we've got someone coming through the ranks that's helping us within the ops team. Yeah. And so, which is great, but they have an understanding of where I've come from, where Claire's come from. Yeah. And so they understand the motive behind what we're trying to do and trying to achieve.
Yeah, well, I think I look at your business and it's evolving into a situation where you're going to be doing more high-level stuff with key clients, and there's going to be less of the operational stuff for you. Yeah. So that founder story needs to really be present, and visible to anybody joining, in case you're not around, because you're going to be flying around the world and stuff. Yeah. So I think that's when the culture starts to break, when people don't remember why it started. Somebody who's been here with you 10 years will remember, but someone just joining won't know the story.
That's why I like the book as well. Writing books is a good way of keeping that narrative in there as well.
Yeah, keeping it clear and making sure people understand. So it's kind of that. And as you look at, when I look at teams that are evolving fast, like you get young leadership teams in place, they need to then be able to function well. Yeah. So I do a 4-day leadership program where the day one we'll look at let's look at your 3-year strategy. Let's help you understand how you design your 3-year strategy. And it's a visual representation, so I use a thing called an orbit, where it's like an archery target with the colours taken out of it, and we plot on the outside where you're going to be in 3 years. The second concentric circle inside where you're going to be in 2 years, and the third inside is where you are a year from now. So we're getting clear, and then when you do that, we start with profit. Let's say start with profit and turnover. Okay, that determines economies of scale, types of clients you're going to deal with, geographical spreads, markets you want to get into. So you can, and it all kind of, they can see it all dovetail. So it unites the departments of a business as well.
What's been really good is that I was doing a podcast, filming one of the days, and one of our team had said to me, he said, "Oh, you said you're going to be like doing work in America. Well, when you're going?" And I was like, "Steady on, we're filming a podcast here." And but it was a good challenge to me, because then it was like, you know what, I've been given an invitation to go out to the US, and I did, and I come back, and that led to some other work, project work and stuff, and obviously then, you know,
snowballs,
HBBA and the stuff that's happened there, and now we've just come back from filming in Denver. And sometimes it's like having those people that know the story also hold you to account to the story. So he always knew that was a motive, that we were, but obviously I'm getting caught up in the ops and and forgot. Well, not I forgot, but it just wasn't a priority. And then all of a sudden it was like, that has shifted us now this year. We've been really, I don't know, I would say we're on probably the strongest position we've been in as a business in terms of growth.
But that's because you made a decision to get an operations person. Which is brilliant, and that frees you up. But if you had not done that, you'd have been struggling between, shall I go, shan't I go? Do I need to be here? Do I not to be here? But you've made that decision, and that's one of the challenges that faces business owners as they scale fast. Is they've got to drop old habits and create new ones fast.
And I think it's the value thing. So for me, sometimes you value being the problem solver, the solutions giver, and at some point you can't be that person.
Is that, so I said earlier, that letting go. You know, you have to let go of what you love doing and actually see somebody else do it. Hold on a second. And I've had that I had an accountancy firm. We went through this process, and I managed the managing partner saying to me, my best client came in, walked towards my office, walked straight past and into someone else's office, and I felt, this isn't right. but it's a good, it is you know, it is hard, like where your team is dealing with a client and they've signed something off and they love it, and you're like, oh, okay. And occasionally you'll get or it's not as gone as well, and then it's like, right, they've got to solve the problem as well. So it plays on both sides. You know, and then you hark back to the good old days. I remember when I used to do that, and it's fun, and now I'm running a business and I don't like it. So you got to be careful. When you're running a business, you want to do it, and you want to do it at that level, and you know why you're doing it. If you know why you're doing it, you know you're fine. But not everybody wants to grow a business. That's the other thing. Some people like to say in a sweet shop where it's a sweet spot where it's profitable, but actually we're not going to scale it.
I mean, see, the key thing for me is impact. And so it's by reaching as many people as possible is one of the reasons why we do the podcast. Does the podcast directly make us money? Well, we're not Joe Rogan yet. You know, we're not getting that load of sponsors queuing up. But what we're doing is we're inspiring people to say, build a life with impact first, and the income will follow. But be influential, make an impact, disrupt, change, whatever. And like with yourself, you know, you're changing organizations by saying, you've done great to get there, but is everyone in the right place? Actually, imagine how great your organisation could be if everybody was in the right position.
Right place, and you're leading them the right way.
100%.
So we look at the motivations, the personalities, the values. We look at the mindset of a leader. We look at the leadership styles. We look at why teams fail and how to avoid it, and how to put a good team together. And then we look at transformation and change. So in the program, we cover all of that. What does change look like? How do people respond to change? How do we take people through change properly? And then how do we identify performance issues, can't do's or won't do's? Can't do's are a skill issue, won't do's are a behavioural issue. How do you manage those? And then we look at how do you coach individuals for success, and how do you coach teams to be successful.
So with all this knowledge that you have and the impact that you've made with organisations, have you thought about getting in touch with your football team?
How do you mean get in touch with
West Ham?
Oh, yeah, well...
Come and sort them out.
I think they're beyond help. You know, even I think when they got Mr. Potter in, they forgot to ask him to bring his wand. Because no, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, football's such a strange game, isn't it? You must look at it and think, it's. I look at it and you can see the people who are man managers, and they're getting the best out of people. But take teams like Brighton. Let's not talk about West Ham because it depresses me.
Yeah.
Teams like Brighton,
well,
Brentford, they're punching above their weight because they've got a fantastic system that sits behind what they do.
Yeah, I was part of a business group, and we had, I think, the COO come and talk to us about how they built it, and he was telling about they got American Express on board, obviously.
Yeah.
Then they got the income that they start making changes, and they said sometimes we got things wrong, so they were shifting them from pie and chips and fish and chips out of newspaper bags to getting them to come inside and eating off plates. And they said some people were like, hang on a minute, we're Brighton, we don't eat off plates. It was just the culture.
Subtle changes.
They were trying to push it too quickly. But obviously their scouting network has been phenomenal and stuff like that. And I think the main thing is if you understand your people, again, it goes back to what you said. My team obviously being Liverpool, you lose a guy like Klopp and you're thinking, well, how are you going to replace him?
You must have been thinking at the end of the season when Klopp left, what's coming? And then you get someone who's equally or even better. Yeah,
it's just but again, whether you're owners or the next tier down, they knew what they were looking for. And one of the things was they said they wanted him to be a family guy. So by looking at his family, you're looking at his family, it said a lot to the type of personality he was. And now, ironically, he hasn't been around his family a lot because they didn't move over from Holland because they're in the middle of their exams. So they were doing a lot of travelling, him backwards and forwards. But he managed to get through it. And he said, in some respect, he got him when he was here. There was no family around, so he just had to focus on now. But like next year, you'll probably see that they will come over and stuff like this. But the point was one of the aspects was they looked at his family life and said, "Is it stable?"
Yeah, it's
really, and it was that was quite a good insight in the fact that they looked at that and said that says a lot about him as a person. That no matter if success comes or it doesn't, he gets the playing the long game. And they've done very well in a short period of time. But if you Klopp, family guy as well, you start to look at they value people.
Well, I've looked at the Premiership this year, and you look at teams like Nottingham Forest. I mean, their manager there, unsuccessful originally with Wolves, but now very successful. What's the difference? What's going on? Then you look at Brighton and Brentford. Brentford a selling club, so they'll just bring new talent through. That's the way they make their money. They sell it on. They bring new talent through. But it's all about systems and processes.
It is.
And then having the right people running those systems and processes. And business is no different. You must get really good systems and processes to make you efficient, but you need good people as well to run those processes.
Agreed. And I look at in the clubs where they're chucking loads and loads and loads of money at the situation, but not spending the time to put the process and thinking money will shortcut the process. And ultimately, it doesn't. It bankrupts.
Well, Manchester United, a great example of that.
100%.
Completely mismanaged.
Long may it continue. No,
yeah, exactly. I agree. And Tottenham for that matter.
But the point of it is in that thing is that when you have that overriding philosophy, some call it like a way or a values base or a style or a code, that then everyone holds you to code. I mean, it's that book with the All Blacks, where the All Blacks had that 15 tenets of code that they have, and it's called, the book's called Legacy. I can't remember the writer of it, but the point is that they held to these 15 tenets, which gave them that success. And where they haven't been so successful, they've drifted from them. They're
the pillars of success. And this is all about the culture, isn't it? You get the culture right, and everybody knows the culture. Everybody buys into the culture. Everybody's recruited against the culture. Like you said with the family, that's one of the cultural aspects is family. So that makes a massive difference to people understanding why they're there, what they're trying to achieve, and that they're part of the journey. It's like that guy sweeping the broom going to NASA, he wasn't sweeping the floor, he was getting them.
That's right.
That
exactly.
Kind of stuff.
And I remember a few years before, Liverpool had a young manager in place, or fairly young by comparison, and the wheels fell off in their title challenge. And what people didn't know until afterwards, that in the lead up to that, he'd left the family home, he had an affair. I mean, it just got worse and worse and worse. And then it plays out on the pitch, and we go, why? And I'm like, well, hang on a minute. It was already derailed 6 months before because it was going to play itself out much further forward. And, horrendous time the guy went through, and, they obviously ended up parting ways, and he ended up going he ended up joining Celtic, and he did a stint at Leicester and then ended Celtic. But his first thing when he went up to Celtic was to have to explain why he had an affair, because the person he had an affair with, the husband, committed suicide.
Right.
So there were consequences. Were deep,
well, I don't always think professional footballers make great managers.
No,
because they're technically brilliant. The same example, but actually managing is a completely different ball game altogether.
Different skill altogether.
And the successful ones are the people who understood people.
Yeah.
Like Harry Redknapp was an example in the old days.
Yeah.
Great man manager, would get a song out of old players, get 2 or 3 seasons out of players that are basically past it.
Yeah.
Could build a team, knew how to talk to people, knew how to get the best out of them, knew when to put an arm around them, knew when to give them a bollock and all that kind of stuff.
That's right.
So he was a great man motivator. And I think good managers, I think that was interesting, that situation at the weekend where Nottingham Forest drew when they could have won, and the owner came on the pitch and ranted, and the manager just kept his calm.
Yep.
And I was looking at that thinking, he probably has that every day in the dressing room with his players.
Yeah.
So he probably has a strategy for managing that, which he demonstrated.
No, absolutely. He diffused the whole situation.
Yeah, he didn't faze him at all. And that's good, keeping his head cool in that situation, understanding that someone's emotionally upset and entitled to be, and just not rising to it.
No, exactly. And ultimately, it was a mistake with the physios.
Yes, exactly.
So, and I think that's what he pointed to. He said, look, hey, I'm only managing what they're telling me. So,
and also he will review it and go, right, okay, what went well, what didn't, what can we do different? It'll be a typical business conversation.
So, Steve, how will people, you obviously got a lot of insight, a lot of knowledge. How will people be able to engage with you? Is it a website? Can they do an assessment? How does it work?
I've got various tools I built. So basically, I've got a wheel of engagement. So I've got 3 books. I'll go through the 3 books.
Yeah, go for it.
So the first book was Turning On Your Profits Tap, which was written after when I worked for Sherlaws. So I came out of that, and I was asked at their conference to put together a revenue model, and present it with no support from the company, I have to say. So I had to design this revenue model based around some of the tools we used. And then when I moved away from the organisation, I just called it the Profits Tap, and each one stands for something around how you generate revenue. So that was the first book, and my experiences around generating revenue and positioning yourself in the marketplace. Second book I was commissioned to write, which was Mapping Motivation for Engagement, which was written with a guy called James Sell, the inventor of motivational maps. So we wrote that together based on my experiences of working with a couple of companies and making them very successful. And the third one was I took that Mapping Motivation for Engagement was commissioned by Routledge, so sells internationally, but it's an academic book, so I find it hard to read, and I wrote it. So so I thought, well, how can I simplify that? So I put it into a How to Become an Employed Choice, which is the third book I wrote, and that's basically based on a quiz, so where it takes you 2 minutes to work out where you sit on that on the engagement space and where you need to put your focus, and each chapter in the book is then looking at that question and why it's important.
Right. Okay.
So you can contact me through LinkedIn. You can contact me through my website, which is skillsforbusinesstraining.co.uk.
Okay.
My mobile, you can ring me, because I don't mind people ringing me, 07971 882628.
Okay.
Or you can email me, steve@skillsforbusinesstraining.co.uk. So those are the ways to probably contact me. Please feel free to get in touch.
Well, it's been absolutely fascinating. We've talked everything from football
to
passions to motivators to values, and for me, it's been a great chat, and I'm sure we're going to get you back to unpack some more of that stuff.
Yeah, well, we're obviously doing lots of stuff with HPBA together as well, so it'd be really good to come back and talk about where we are next.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a deal.
Cheers.
Let's see you again.
Okay.
Cheers. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Purpose People podcast. How you can help us is to like and subscribe our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Google and Amazon. That helps us get our message out there to help people go after their dreams, double down on it, and be successful in life on their terms.